Done one of these lives in a minute. Usually Mr. Aiken is running point here, but I'm super excited today to be having a conversation with my friend Jared Fuller. If you're not aware, the Nearbound Summit is right around the corner. And so we wanted to talk through some of the intricate plays that are involved in executing a partnership-based strategy. And so as we think about what it means to start to go outbound, what the future of outbound is. I'm doing this live from a hotel room in Nashville where I literally spoke yesterday about the future of what outbound is going to look like. And as I think about where this goes, it's not just about the one-to-one anymore. We're moving into this world of the many to many. And so I'm super excited to bring on Jared. There he is. Jared, what's going on, man?
Just it's Nearbound season. We're having some fun let's put a new spin and overlay on how you actually reach people today. Because I think I've had a lot of fun reading your content and the stuff y'all are doing with Lavender, and how to break down and make email a lot more simple. And what I can kind of talk about is how to write email for other people. So that's kind of the inverse here, right? It's not you sending it, it's you getting it to get someone else to send it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was giving a talk yesterday in Nashville on the future of outbound, and I was talking about how we're evolving away from, step one is this one-to-one, right? And that's like you run your cadence, you put your ICP in. Then we're moving into this like one-to-many, which is like the one rep is reaching out and like trying to multi-thread across the account. And then like the best of the best, they're doing like many-to-many. And then as you think about like what many-to-many means, right? It's like, say you're my VP of sales, I'm looping you in and also getting you involved, reaching out to multiple persona. But when you start to add Nearbound to this concept, many-to-many, you're starting to bring in like third parties into the equation to start generating really a surround sound around some of these top prospects. You get a next level view of what's going on within that account, next level view of access within that account. So I'm super excited to dig in today because I think as we think about how this is evolving, it's nothing short of where this is going.
I think you said the right word, the trigger word, which is I'm in the midst of writing Nearbound the book right now, and I kind of start with the definition of Nearbound, like Nearbound in a word, Nearbound in a sentence, a paragraph, page, chapter, and then book. And the one word is surround, right? So outbound target, inbound attract, Nearbound's about surrounding. So who has those relationships, and how can you help connect those dots? The best salespeople I know, they're not just customer obsessed. Or I should say quota obsessed, they're customer obsessed, and they know the types of people that influence them, and they build relationships around the account to help people get where they want to go.
Yeah, 100%. Also got a comment. You got the lavender background going today. Appreciate it.
Well, we got Reveal and Lavender. We actually share a similar color. So there's a bet right now at Reveal where if X happens this quarter, I have to show up and give my opening keynote at the summit with purple hair. And basically, I'm like, someone has to beat me on the sales team. And I'm like, no one's going to beat me. I'm not showing up with purple hair.
That's it. That's what Sam Nelson said at one point in time. And that guy's still got blue hair.
Right. Yeah. Outreach, right?
Yeah. So I want to dig in more on this idea of being like customer focused, not just quota focused. I'm a big believer that when we're going outbound, a lot of outbound right now is very much so like, hey, is this interesting to you? Right? It's very much like pitch. It's not about, and like, you're getting response because like something might be priority right now. And like, depending on how you like hone and tweak that message. One of the things that like I'm a big believer in is like really good prospecting right now is just effective discovery. One of the templates that we're going to run through when we're going live in a few weeks is the idea of gathering intel from partners. At the end of the day, priorities are the things that are going to generate the most response. And your understanding of those priorities play a huge factor. What do you think are some of the things that your partners in market can help you gain a deeper understanding of? Like as a seller, what should I be like focusing with my partners to try to understand from them?
Well, we're about to go off. This is going to be fun. So I hope everyone's ready. That's West Coast, 9 a.m. And lunchtime East Coast, because I'm about to lay down some facts here. So let's imagine you sell to a CIO, right? Like a
Love it.
IT persona, right? So here's the thing. Trust people, sells and trust. That's something that's starting to come back up. Whereas that's all that mattered, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And now it's like, oh, how do we build trust? Well, trust comes from helping people reach their promised land. But here's the problem. We only trust people who've been to the places we want to go.
Yeah.
So if you're an account executive and you're selling to a CIO, what gives you the right to think that you can help that person get where they want to go? You've never been a CIO, much less a great CIO.
That's huge.
Gut
Yeah.
check at the door, right? Like quota obsessed versus customer obsessed. You have to be cognizant of the fact that you are not that person. So who is, right? That's the first thing you need to recognize. So you can play the game on hard mode, or you can play the game on easy mode. Playing the game on hard mode is the website, LinkedIn, these perfunctory things like Demon Deacons, go Wake Forest, ACC basketball. Like, gosh, you slap your head on the desk. Like, no one cares, right? No one cares. What they care about is themselves and their problems and the people who share the struggle with them. So you need to be obsessed with that struggle, and you need to be able to bring those people who've been to the place they want to go to the table. And that could be your customers, your partners, community members, influencers. And that's the basis for the intel play. I'll pause there, but I was like, I'm about to go off because that one's hard hitting and it's just a fact.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And as we think about the intel play with partners, I think we can get into some of like the tactical nuance of like how we should go about it. But I think before we get into tactical plays, etc., like what exactly should I look to learn? Like what kinds of questions should I be thinking about when I'm trying to reach out? Is it just understanding like, hey, what's your view of the strategic priorities that are happening?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing is like, I detail this a little bit in what I call the Nearbound sales blueprint, right? So there's a first step, and then there's 3 plays: intel, influence, intro, the 3 I's. So we're talking about intel, but just like all sales, the first rule of sales is people care about themselves, not your product, right? Second rule of sales is, target accounts sell to people. When you add that third dimension, that X, Y, Z axis, not all partners or, people on the surrounding your customer are equal, right? So you have to make some judgment calls of, I would say, the recency, the relevancy, right, and the potential impact of who you're reaching out to for that intel. So I'll give you an example. I've seen this go from, a board member's spouse, over to, like some sort of intel play, all the way to something simple like, hey, we saw that they bought, like when I was at Drift, they bought 6 cents 2 months ago, right? Well, I have to imagine, Will, that if you're buying something and spending, 50, 100,000, couple $100,000, there was probably a business challenge, right? And a business initiative on solving that challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, guess what people don't talk about on their website or on their LinkedIn? They don't talk about their business challenges, and they don't talk about their business initiatives. So if you're out there doing personalized research, guess what you're not getting? You're not getting the answers to the test. You have to show up to that call to try and suss that out. Whereas you could invert that and go, hey, I was catching up with such and such over at 6 cents and talking about how blah, blah, blah. Like you're focused on doing this, you're doing this. And that email that goes out from you or from them is a much more informed starting place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of this as the difference between first and third party data. Maybe this is like second party data. In the sense that
there's a rabbit hole we could go down there, but yeah, it's kind of second party data.
Yeah. Because it's like the problem with third party data is a lot of times it's like either like not verified. An AI algorithm scraped the page and like gave you a best guess. And so all those like signals you have to create inference off of and create hypotheticals versus what we're talking about with like whether it's prospecting below the line, getting intel and using that to go up into the top of an organization, or talking to a partner and being like, hey, what's going on within that organization? You're gaining like much more verified information, much more the resolution, right? It's not 720, it's 4K, right? Where you're starting to get a really, really clear view of what's happening and what's going on within that org. That's, I mean, like,
100%.
The rep over at 6 Sense might only have like a smidge of what's going on, but it's at least like a much more clear picture than, say, like hiring on LinkedIn. Here's where they are in their funding cycle. Here's like where they went to school. Here's like their past job history and how they might be approaching things, right? You just don't know. Glassdoor reviews are a goldmine too. I saw a comment just come in, but it's just I think about those as like interesting. It's a much different resolution as far as like a data point for sales reps to be operating with.
Right. So if it's a technology partner that you integrate with, you have to assume that there's some tangential value proposition and some overlap of persona, right? So like there's going to be some persona that sits next to your persona, some continuity of workflow, et cetera. And I think this is particularly important in 2023 when everything is budget constrained all the way up to the CFO, CEO for, all sorts of different things. People aren't buying software for fun in 2023, right? There was a reason why that deal got closed won.
So what was that reason? Software for fun.
Right? Like, so I think that's a great place to start. Agency or service partner relationships, like you should be looking at those types of things that are around the account. And why are those just as important for Intel? It's because, well, in software, we sell access. Guess what agencies and, so the consultants sell? They sell outcomes. Like they have to be able to, if they've been there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, guess what? They have to earn that right. They are trusted inherently. Right?
Whether you agree or disagree with what they're doing, they have the ear of the person that you want.
Right. And here's the other thing. Here, I'll invert this. If you don't get that intel from those people and they do have influence, you have unknown detractors potentially as well. Right? Like you are not you're like, this is my deal, right? This is my account. And it's like, you have nothing. You don't have a relationship. You don't have authority. They're not doing business with you, but they are. It's actually their account, right? You are trying to earn the right to even ask for entry.
You're trying to make it your account, but it's actually their account.
Right, exactly. It's their account technically. So like, I'm going to go make it easier for me and be like, hey, how did this already happen? So like the Intel play, you can run it a bunch of different ways, but it's basically just giving your context, Will, right? So like, simple email. Hey, I'm talking to a contact over at X company and I saw, this other data point, right? They became a customer or this thing happened or whatever. And here's the reason why I'm reaching out. And here's what I'm trying to know. Like, notice you closed them 2 months ago. I'm curious what the business case that you were aligning to was. Here's what I was trying to align to. Am I off base? There's ways you can get the intel over email or ask for a call. But by all means.
Well, and before we give away too much, because I want to definitely give a sneak peek of what's coming in a couple weeks. But I think giving folks like some high level viewpoints of like how we think about where partners can be involved, because like I think Intel is just like one piece of the equation, right? In the sense of like how we're using them across the entire deal cycle.
That's actually really good. I think this is where I might use Jill Rowley, our friend, as like a role model. Will, have y'all talked much about like strategic account plans or anything like that, like mapping out kind of like the whole org and doing bigger enterprise sales much?
I mean, not with Jill in specific. Does she have any particular viewpoints though?
Well, the reason why I brought her up is that just the amount of people that she will surround an account with by default, just like how she works, is incredible. So she'll send the most technically like or grammatically illiterate, DMs, SMSs. Like these are not beautiful, like long, well thought out things, just very quick things. but she'll get information from like 10 people before she talks to one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always noticed, I'm like, there's something very special about that. And I kind of default that way. I've just seen her do it way
Yeah.
better than I've seen anyone. And the best AEs that I know tend to have that point of view, right? That you can kind of get more information points. Like, here's the other thing on an Intel play. Why would you stop at one? It's like, oh, I reached out to a partner. It's like, no, like surround and
Yeah.
get as much as possible to, because here's the phrase, and this is the objective. And I think Sam McKenna says this, Joe Rowley says this: show me you know me. Show me you know me. That's the only way you're getting a meeting with me or advancing the conversation. You
Yeah.
don't show up and get to ask me questions to like drive that. Like, it's 2023. My own team doesn't have that time with me.
Yeah. It's I think about this in a few different ways, right? Because like a lot of what we're describing, right, is as account executives trying to go to close accounts, like we have to recognize there's more than just like the organization. There's the ecosystem surrounding you and that organization that you're going to talk to. And so as you have those like relationships, like the amount of planning that goes in indicates what's going to come out on the other end. The amount of work that you put in is going to indicate what comes out on the other end. And so like the days of, literally talking about this yesterday, the days of the 2018 button pusher where like your onboarding and your enablement was all about here's how to use the tool, that's dead. That's gone. Like we're way past that, right? And so as I think about like how do we approach this a little bit differently? How do we think about this a little bit differently? A lot of what you're describing is like creating like so much, like you're almost like creating pressure, peer pressure from the ecosystem as a whole of like, yeah, you use all these things, but like we know this is what's going on. Why wouldn't you be using them? Right. And so like on top of your existing efforts, you're creating a pull from the market itself to pull you into that organization. Also, I just set off fireworks. I have no idea how.
It's the new Mac OS X, and you have to turn it off manually every time. It's the most botched Apple thing I've ever seen because if I don't turn it off with my camera, it actually crashes the feed. It's like, and you can't turn it off by default. So anyways, great point. You dropped an Apple bomb there. Here's what I would say is that there's a continuity between Intel, influence, and intro. So I'll give you that example with like a Jill, or how I might approach it, is that I'm getting intel from across, let's say, a handful of people around an account. I start to get some sense of like who's kind of in charge, who's really the mover, the blocker, the shaker, what initiatives are really like roll up to the CEO. Like, is this a top 3 priority? But then as I develop that picture, then I start to move from intel to like influence, meaning when I know more, I can actually ask for more. So for instance, let's say I have a meeting coming up and I've talked to 5, 6, 7 people around an account. I have a meeting coming up with an executive, a CMO for the first time, right? And one of my partners is really tight. They use their tech really well. What I might do is I might shoot them a note in advance and say, hey, I have this meeting coming up with the CMO. You know, I know A, B, C, D. Would you mind throwing this into your, you know, your monthly call, this one slide about us? Like, that's an influence play. And then here's what happens though, to kind of tie the point back together, Will, is that whenever they show up to that call, they're like, man, I hadn't heard about A, and in the past 2 weeks, that's all I'm hearing about.
Yeah.
It's it wasn't from you.
Yeah. It's the same concept around like PLG, right? Like when we closed, there's a company in the revenue tech space. It's like when we closed them, literally their VP of sales came inbound and he's like, this exploded what feels like overnight within our Slack channel, right? And it's like you want that kind of momentum. Not everybody can have a PLG motion, and like there's all sorts of things you can have a conversation about with that. But like, yeah, what you're looking for is that like surround sound effect that makes it like I'd be a dummy not to at least have this conversation with you, regardless of the stage where you're at within the deal cycle. I think one of the things that we're starting to touch on are these different plays, these different like formats for outbound that we can be doing with our partners that can be helping us move and create opportunity and move opportunities through to close. With that, I think a high level understanding for folks of like the different plays would be really helpful. So we've talked a bit about the intel play, like gathering information, right? And that, like, by the way, doesn't stop at just the initial prospecting. That's something that's always going on, right? We're talking about like, meetings happening mid funnel, and you're like, hey, I know you've got a conversation with them coming up. Do you mind dropping some notes about us, right? Like the influence play. The other one, and I think this last one, the intro play, right,
That's the holy grail.
Is like, that's really where like you can start to open a lot of doors.
100%. So the influence play versus the intro play, I'll kind of break down the two major differences. The influence play is you should have some sort of next step that is identified, but you need third party validation or second party validation, right? Someone who's not there in the room, influencing them to take that meeting, to come back from, dead, like cold, right? Like an influence play is a great thing to, a great play to run when you've had momentum, but you've stalled, right? To get them back on the horn and figure out why. So it's kind of intel. Hey, why is this stalled? Influence, let's get them back in. And I think the principle to call out here, which is what I was kind of talking about at the beginning, is you have to get really good at making it easy for people to help you.
Yeah.
Right. So the key with the influence play is not just sharing the context and the ask, but then saying, hey, I wrote this for you to send over if you don't mind, or I put together this slide, or whatever that ask is. Make it as easy as possible. But if you say things like, hey, do you think you could help me out with this account? Like, and put in a good word for X, literally within 60 seconds, that person's forgot 100% about your ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
And same thing with intro. I could kind of break that down too a little bit differently. It's like intro is a, that's a debit against your account, not a credit.
Yeah. This gets into a bigger topic of like where partnerships go wrong. I think a lot of partnerships become very deposit oriented or withdrawal oriented, right? And you got the bank of the partnership, and it's like a lot of things are just like, hey, you work in that account? Hey, are you talking to those people? Like, can you like help me out? And I think a lot of folks need to recognize that like it's a two-way street. Like people aren't just like charity organizations trying to help you out. What advice do you have to sellers in thinking of that? Because like one of the things we're talking about is like making it easy, but holistically, what do you think organizations should be thinking about as part of their strategy when it comes to like, if I'm an AE and I'm like, okay, I hear these plays, I hear this strategy, like, but here's the problem. It's like, I'm not getting the help that I need. I'm doing all the things. I'm not getting the help I need. And it's because the organization's not treating our partners well. What do you think are some of those core fundamental things that organizations need to be doing?
Well, here's the first thing that I would say is that it's not just a partner problem. And in fact, I would say it has almost nothing to do with partnerships or the partner team or the partner program or the partners. 9 times out of 10, it's a lack of understanding the relationships that exist around the accounts that you own. So if I'm a seller, or if I'm coaching a seller, I'm going to say, hey, you own 50 accounts, right? They're assigned every quarter. Do you have any sense of the relationships that exist around those? So that I would say there's proactive and reactive. Proactive is as part of that account assignment process. What are you doing? You're like, hey, these are kind of accounts that are what? Okay, they're strategic targeted outbound accounts. It has an SLA of 5 contacts and X, activities and blah, blah, blah. Okay, what about these other accounts that let's say have, 6, 10, 15 different relationships around them that you have access to?
Yep.
So like if you're going to go make an intro ask, you should probably have some sense of like which partner, which contact, and like it's almost like a value hypothesis. It's like a partner hypothesis. What is that based on? And that's going to be about their relationship with the end customer. And that ask has to be informed. Again, in sales, it's not about you. In Nearbound and in partnerships, it's also not about you. Like, what about their relationship? Doesn't risk their relationship to intro you. You have to make it not only easy, you have to have the hypothesis where it's like, oh yeah, that's an easy ask and I'm not risking myself. Like that's the key.
Which I think this gets into some of the psychological aspects of like what we are talking about. Because I think there's a lot of psychology behind what we are going to go through and what we're going to deep dive on when we're going live. And that, like, you and I, we took some notes down on like all these different things where it's like cognitive load theory, reciprocity, social capital. Like, one of the things that you and I are hitting on over and over again is the social capital that comes into this. And so, like, I know you and I are going to get super tactical when we go live, but I think this is a great op to just sort of speak to some of the big picture things of like, one of the things that you're hitting on so well is like making it easy, right? Like, making it easy is always like, the more you reduce friction, the more you get the action that you want. But the this aspect of like social capital, man, it's I don't think enough sellers are necessarily thinking about it.
No, I mean, trust is the currency that powers, what you could call an ecosystem or a network, right? And you have to understand that networks, like not all nodes, not all, points in a network have the same proximity or the same gravity of where they're going. And that social capital is, kind of like your proximity or gravity. You're gaining some or you're losing some, and people have their own. So, are you helping people get closer to their customer, generate more influence? Because when you have trust, what does it save? It saves time and money, right? It's a form of information where it's actually, I get to skip past all that stuff. For instance, Will, if we were talking about A, B, C, or D, and I had a SDR org, and you said, hey, Jared, I need, I were to come ask you a question about some tooling or tech or copy or something, I'm probably just going to take your word for it. I'm just going to take you at your word because I trust you. And that skips all of that information and time and process. There's a lot of there is a lot of load and cognitive load in all of the effort that goes in building the list and the messaging and all of this stuff. And that's all waste actually inside of your organization. Right. Versus just skipping straight to the, hey, here's the connection. So on the, I think we got someone that was asking for like a real world example. So like at the Nearbound Summit, Will and I will be releasing templates for each play, but I have a couple that I could kind of break down, Will, too, to kind of talk about how that kind of the rubber meets the road a little bit. But happy to do that or go a different direction if you want.
Well, I know we only have like, I think, how much time do we have set here for this? We got, a quick 30 minutes here. So
yeah,
I think, if you want to dig into the hyper tactical, come join us at the Nearbound Summit, because that's where we're going to do it. That's where we're going to break it down. This is a teaser to the much, much larger thing that's coming. So I'm really excited to break it down. Jared, quick promo for the event. Where do they need to go? How do they sign up? How can they come join us?
Yeah, so nearboundsummit.com. If you're in sales and you're trying to bring your sales folks, so nearbound.com is the primary site, but you can also, you'll see CTAs to go to nearboundsummit.com and register. So it's fine if you head over to nearbound.com. And we have a crazy lineup. If you've been hearing Nearbound everywhere, right? So like outbound, inbound, Nearbound, like Jason Lemkin's opening up the event. That's not normal. He typically doesn't speak at other things. So excited to have him on day one. Day 4 is Mark Roberge, Will Allred, all sorts of incredible people talking about the future of kind of GTM in this intersection of what we were talking about today. And if you're in sales, you can go in the agenda and just go to day 4 and only register for day 4. It's 100% remote, which is pretty cool. But this is where we're pretty awesome too. We'll actually ship you an entire workbook that you can actually take notes to crush your fiscal 2024 plans. So it's 100% free, comfort of your home. You can watch on demand as you want as well.
Amazing. Well, cool. Jared, I cannot wait. Yeah, I know we've had multiple planning sessions at this point. We've been getting into the weeds on this. So getting the chance to riff live with you, as we've been talking about, we're just like, man, we should be recording these sessions because it's just, we've been having a good time with this. It's gonna be really fun. And so, yeah, y'all definitely check out the Nearbound Summit website. I think it's been posted enough times that I don't need to show y'all where to go. But yeah, super excited to see y'all there. Jared, thank you for jumping on live with me, and appreciate everyone who joined.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, team, and everyone who hopped in. We're going to have a blast, and we're going to bring all this stuff together. It's going to be fun.